Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another highlight video from our continued coverage of the Forza Horizon 4 Olympic Games qualifying events. Today is day 6, so we're taking a trip back to Europe for the German Qualifiers. German engineering here looking to make a strong impression today, as we have 5 entrants chomping at the bits, 3 modern performance cars, and 2 legendary GT race cars from the 1990s. First up today, though, is the 2016 Audi R8 V10 Plus. This vehicle, the R8, has been a mainstay of the German supercar segment since its introduction back in 2006, with several different iterations, leaving its styling largely unchanged, but the performance and equipment a bit more modern with each refresh. The Audi group owning Lamborghini actually means that much of the technology and platform from Lamborghini's vehicles like the Gallardo and the Huracan are borrowed from the R8, but with more subtle styling and greater practicality, the R8 has remained the more refined, practical German-engineered alternative to bold and brash Italian exotics at often more affordable price. This one here, though, is the 2016 V10 Plus model, with some updated tech and the V10 power plant over the optional V8, naturally aspirated of course, and upgraded for qualifying with some light engine modifications, some exhaust, and a larger race block, along with some weight savings and platform upgrades that ring it in at a value of $284,950. So fairly well priced for the performance here. Taking a look at the numbers though, we can see that the R8, running the stock all-wheel drive setup, is looking pretty well balanced, in fact, with some strong acceleration and launch numbers there, 10 and 10, and some solid handling all around, and a good speed number at 8.3, so certainly a well-balanced looking car here so far. 637 horsepower and 431 pound-feet of torque, though a bit on the weaker side with those light engine upgrades, but just over 3,000 pounds, not too bad of a number for weight. Taking a look now at the tuning numbers, though, we can see for acceleration 2.43 and 5.63 for 0 to 60 and 0 to 100 times are solid numbers, about average for the other all-wheel drive competitors we've seen so far. And 219.1 top speed, though, is a strong target number for this track in particular. It's clearly here going for a good all-around balance, not too heavy on the handling or the speed on any one side. And for braking here we have 107.9 and 264.9 for 60 and 100 to 0 times. So those are, or distance exactly rather, but some pretty strong braking numbers there, at least on the higher end, and if not near the very best for sure. And for lateral Gs, we have 1.22 and 1.32, so quite strong handling as well. So all around, quite the well-rounded car as expected from the R8. Our second competitor for Germany is the 2016 BMW M4 GTS, currently our last entrant to take to the track, so you can see a live look at its lap right now on your screen. The M4 is the high-end performance model from BMW's 4 Series line of mid-size sports coupes, which is the recent successor to the long-enduring M3 from the 3 Series, which remained very popular throughout its 30-year run due to its impressive performance, practicality, luxury, and engineering in a well-rounded, affordable package. The M4, however, was introduced in the 2014 model year, and after BMW ended production on M3 models in 2018, the M4 remains a spiritual successor between the M2 and the M5 models. This car, though, is the high-performance M4 GTS version, introduced in 2016, which remains a rather rare model with only 700 units produced, and features sporty upgrades over the base M4, such as a roll cage, new wheels, and a built-in spoiler, along with performance features under the hood that make it the highest performance model in the 4 Series lineup. This one's been upgraded even further for our S1 qualifiers, however, and sports some platform improvements and weight reduction, as well as some performance upgrades to its twin-turbocharged inline-6 engine. So if we take a look at the numbers for the BMW, we can see that it's looking quite well-rounded with strong acceleration from an all-wheel drive swap, very good looking handling and braking numbers at 8.5 and 9.2, and good speed at 8.1 as well. And we can see on this screen 700 horsepower and 593 pound-feet of torque is a relatively strong number for this level, and 3267 for pounds is about average as well. So looking pretty well-rounded there. Looking at the tuning numbers, however, 1.888 and 4.880 for 0 to 60 and 0 to 100 are very strong times for acceleration. The only car under the 2-second mark for 0 to 60 besides the McLaren 650S, and one of few cars under 5 seconds for 0 to 100 as well. So 219.0 for top speed, similar to the Audi R8, so a good target number for this track. And for braking with 108 and 265 feet, some strong numbers here as well. And lateral Gs 1.2 and 1.34, among the better handling cars we've seen so far, along with all these other numbers. So once again, looking very well rounded and should put out a strong time. Our third entrant and the last of the modern performance cars is the 2005 Porsche Carrera GT. This legendary sports car from the early 2000s, originally designed as a Le Mans prototype, was a unique ultra-high performance mid-engine road car from Porsche that was produced from 2003 to 2007, with 1,270 units produced in total. Powered by a special V10 power plant designed by Porsche for Formula 1 in the 90s but later scrapped, the Carrera GT's incredible balance of speed and Porsche precision with a manual transmission made it one of the greatest and last true analog sports and supercars before the influx of modern technological overcomplication. Indeed, the Carrera GT is lauded as one of the history's greatest sports cars, awarded the #1 spot on Sports Car International's top sports cars of the 2000s, and #8 on its top sports cars of all time list, with select few going so far as to say it's perhaps the greatest performance road car ever made. With such high praise, it's no wonder Porsche's brought out the Carrera GT for this qualifier, and this one, a 2005 model, has only been slightly modified with some racing tires, platform upgrades, and an all-wheel drive swap. That brings it to a total value of $435,300. So looking at the numbers here for the Carrera GT, you can see that it's looking very evenly balanced between all the indicator marks here, with 8.5 and 8.9 handling and braking quite strong there, and solid speed as well at 8.2. 672 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque, though, are not some of the highest numbers we've seen, as it does have very little modification, and 3,348 pounds, about average among our other competitors. But if we take a look at the tuning numbers, we can see here 2.3 and 5.27 for acceleration times, about average for most of the competitors that are at all-wheel drive at least, or perhaps a little closer to the higher end. And 216.3, a very targeted number there for top speed on the Kensington Downs track. And for braking, 105 and 261 are just about the strongest braking distance numbers we've seen so far, except perhaps for some of the other racing cars like the Aston Martin Vantage GT12 and others, but very, very close to the very top there, so very good stuff. And 1.23 and 1.35 for lateral Gs means it's also looking very, very strong indeed in handling, so the Carrera GT dialed in for a very good all-around setup, certainly showing some of that trademark Porsche precision and balance. Carrera GT, though not the only Porsche in the lineup, as Germany has elected for one of its two GT race car engines to be this, the 1998 911 GT1. This car, along with England's McLaren F1 GT, which we saw earlier, was a legendary road racing car from the 1990s, which debuted in the 1996 24 Hours of Le Mans, and was designed to compete in the GT1 category of the then newly revived sports car racing series, the FIA GT Championship. This series brought back the classic GT tradition of racing heavily modified versions of road cars, which in this 1990s championship saw modified versions of road cars such as the McLaren F1 and the Ferrari F40, among others, compete for glory at some of the highest levels of racing. Porsche shocked the world, though, when unveiling the 911 GT1 in 1996, as instead of basing their race car on an existing road car, Porsche exploited the rules to the fullest by designing and building a purpose-built prototype race car and creating a very limited number of street-legal road-going versions to comply with the production vehicle specification. This meant the 25 so-called Strassen version, or street version vehicles, were created based off of the race car and not the other way around. At any rate, this 1998 911 GT1 is here to use its proud racing heritage to compete for the nation of Germany, and only very slightly modified, with Porsche's racing team opting to keep street tires on it and its stock rear-wheel drive setup in order to take out some weight and add a little bit of power with some slightly stronger turbos, all coming to a value of $2,506,050, an incredible price tag for such a rare and legendary vehicle. But if we take a look at the numbers, you can see the 911 GT1 putting up some very strong handling and braking numbers here at 8.9 and 9.6 as expected. Not the strongest acceleration with that racing engine and rear-wheel drive setup, but a decent speed figure at 8.1 though. Looking over here though, we see 701 horsepower and 578 pound-feet of torque are decent numbers here for the GT1, and at only 2,060 pounds, it's incredibly light as well, so it should have some strong power to weight ratio for sure. And if we take a look at the tuning numbers, You see 3.4 and 6.5 for acceleration and launch are not the greatest numbers, but with a rear-wheel drive racing setup, those are certainly still quite respectable. And 214.2, another good targeted top speed for qualifying here as well. And for braking, the GT1 is looking pretty strong with 120 and 268.9 there, some of the better braking distances we've seen. And for lateral Gs, 1.22 and 1.53 at 120 miles per hour is above and beyond the competition. Very, very strong there, and should surely give it an advantage in those corners. And last but not least, for the other entrant in our 1990s GT category, we have the 1998 Mercedes-Benz AMG CLK GTR. With this car coming as an entrant into the Le Mans and FIA GT Championships a couple of years after Porsche's 911 GT1 first started, Mercedes-Benz opted for the same technique in designing the CLK GTR, designing it first and foremost as a prototype race car and designing road-going versions second in order to meet regulations. Debuting in the 1997 season of the FIA GT Championship at home at the Hockenheim Ring, the CLK GTR managed to do quite well against its rivals Porsche and Ferrari, among the others, winning the Drivers' and Teams Championships for both the 1997 and 1998 seasons. This one here, though, from 1998 is taking on the Porsche 911 GT1 for the chance to represent Germany in the Olympics Championship, as well as mount a challenge to the McLaren F1 GT's time from the English qualifier to show the world what it's made of. Mercedes, with this qualifier, opting to go a different route as Porsche, putting all their points into handling by going with race tires and very little to no other modifications, bringing this car's total value to $2,054,250. Taking a look at the numbers, though, here, for the Mercedes, we can see that strategy has worked because we have incredibly strong handling and braking numbers at 9.4 and 9.5. I mean, very, very strong there, but a bit meager acceleration and launch numbers and a relatively low speed at 7.7, so clearly throwing all of their points into one thing here. Before we take a look at the tuning numbers, though, however, let's take a look at these. 626 horsepower and 542 pound-feet of torque, untouched for this qualifier here with those no modifications there. And 3,200 pounds being over 1,000 pounds heavier than the 911 GT1, which opted for those weight savings, so we'll have to see how the CLK GTR stacks up. Yeah, let's take a look at the tuning numbers here, finally. And 2.9 and 7.0 for seconds there, 0 to 60 and 0 to 100 acceleration. Definitely on the lower end of the spectrum for our contestants. Over 7 seconds for 0 to 100 is not great, but certainly not the worst indeed. While the top speed, the 206.9 rather, is perhaps enough to do well on this track, but definitely on the lower end for sure. Braking distances, though, looking very strong at 112 and 247. Not the very best we've seen, but almost quite the very best indeed. And at lateral Gs, we can see that nothing has come even remotely close to these handling levels. I mean, 1.47 and 1.67. Absolutely monstrous numbers there, so going to have some serious cornering ability, but without those speed numbers, we're going to have to see if it's good enough to win the German crown. Alright, now that our final entrant has wrapped up its lap on the qualifying track, let's take a look at the leaderboards for the nation of Germany. In 5th place, we have the 1998 Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR, putting up a time of 320.847 and a top speed of 206. Definitely a strong time for the bottom of the leaderboard and a good time overall, but a bit of a disappointment for Team Mercedes as their handling strategy not paying off for them today on the track as well as they would have liked. In 4th place, though, we have the 2016 Audi R8 V10 Plus, with a time of 318.906 and a top speed of 213. A time in the 18 seconds for 4th place sure means that Germany has some strong contenders, and the R8 doing quite well out there with some good numbers all around and a great effort for Germany. Just above it, though, is our 3rd place qualifier, the 2016 BMW M4 GTS with 218.800 and a top speed of 215. Very close to the Audi's time and a strong showing in the 18s for BMW. All around a strong car indeed. But the day was all Porsches as both their competitors made it to the top 2 spots, with number 2 being the 1998 Porsche 911 GT1. This car ran a phenomenal lap of 316.343 at a top speed of 217, just barely beating out the TVR for a new qualifying record. But Porsche in Germany wasn't done yet, because in the first place was the 2005 Porsche Carrera GT, running in an absolutely phenomenal lap at 315.437 and a top speed of 213. What a performance from the Carrera. Incredibly strong all around with acceleration, speed, and handling, and setting a new qualifying record by nearly a full second. Overall, though, as we can look here, our leaderboard, the German qualifier was certainly an exciting one. Very strong numbers coming out from all the entrants, but certainly a bit of a disappointment for the Mercedes team, as their car surely could have been able to mount a decent challenge to that 911 GT1, but their strategy just not working out today. And you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but boy did it work for Porsche today. Celebrations all around in Stuttgart as both their competitors take the number 1 and 2 spots on not only the German qualifying leaderboard, but the overall qualifying leaderboard as well. Very impressive stuff here, and it's only going to get better from here. Now let's take a look at some highlights and a lap comparison of our new record time. Alright, now let's take a look at the Carrera GT's amazing lap against our defending champion, the TVR Cerberus Speed 12. Almost an entire second's difference here. We can see already the Carrera GT very strong in handling and quite speedy. Already at the very beginning of this track, coming out ahead of the Cerberus Speed 12. You can hear the difference there and see it between the two as they cross each checkpoint. The Carrera GT just looks very strong in those corners, able to power through at some really good top speeds. And this lap in particular was just absolutely perfect in just about every way. Right here, this corner, really exceptional right there. You can see the Carrera GT makes up a lot of time. Look how far ahead. We're just wiggling out the back end to just barely tap the checkpoint there. So smart. And being able to gain a lot of time off of that one corner alone. And even powering around the long reservoir straight here. The TVR, a little bit faster, but not by a whole lot. And has to slow down quite a lot. Where the Porsche is able to power through with some exceptional handling there. And at this point, the Porsche a significant lead. Coming down, taking these corners very well. But we are approaching the Horizon Festival corners and the straightaway, which surely is where the TVR will make up some time here. You can see through the Horizon Festival corners, and now Porsche onto the straightaway. Still definitely ahead. Onto the straight now. The Carrera GT. Better acceleration there. Faster through that first checkpoint. But as we can see right about here, the TVR begins to overtake the Porsche on speed. Going all the way up to 200 here. And eating away at that lead from the Carrera GT. Getting closer and closer. Almost the exact same time there down through the straight. And just a little bit faster than the Porsche on that one. But the Carrera able to come down to a nice stop and take that corner quickly means that it takes the lead right back. And now it's got a bit of a lead and it is looking to widen it. TVR, though, close behind. As we can see them coming down through the town corners. Still not very far behind, but the TVR, we know in the end, is going to be about a second slower. You can already see here from the Carrera GT that acceleration, the handling, taking these corners perfectly. And off and away. There you have it, a new record from the Porsche Carrera GT, 3:15.437. Now, taking a look at the qualifying leaderboards overall, we can see that Germany had quite a remarkable run today, taking home the top 2 spots, meaning that the top 5 is now occupied by 2 cars from Germany, 2 from England, and 1 from Japan. The BMW and the Audi, too, putting up some very good times, snagging the 8 and 9 spots on the leaderboard. And finally, the Mercedes, not the strongest result here with those racing tires, down at number 19 out of 31 so far. You can take a look at the data here yourself, but a few interesting things worth mentioning here. The 911 GT1 with a pretty strong power-to-weight ratio at 0.34, with only 2,000 pounds. It's pretty strong there, whereas the others looking more in the 0.2 range, and the Mercedes a bit lower still at 0.19, not doing it any favors. Other than that, though, obviously the 2 GT race cars showing far above average lateral Gs, but Germany's contestants all seem to be pretty well-rounded, with none of them really going for speed over handling. The only exception being the Mercedes CLK GTR, which went for handling very hard, but with a top speed of only 206 and some weak acceleration numbers, it just wasn't the right call for this track. You really need some of that speed to get you around quick enough. Perhaps we'll see another shootout between some of these GT cars, though, and if we do, I'm sure Mercedes will want some revenge for their disappointing result today. But overall, the times on the board here, Germany doing very well, and we should see some good times coming out from the Italians and the Americans, the final 2 nations to compete. So we'll see how that goes. Well, that just about does it for our coverage of Day 6 and the qualifiers for the nation of Germany. But stay tuned as we have only 2 more nations left to compete before we reveal the championship race. And next up is the nation of Italy. With some very strong numbers coming from Germany, the big bad Italians are looking to try their hand at besting German engineering with a bit of their trademark power and panache. So it's sure to be a good show you won't want to miss. We'll see you next time.